It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco.
My first allegiance is what will be best for the Philadelphia Eagles and our fans for the next 3, 4, 5 years.
Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
I know it seems trivial to many, but seeing live video of the Eagles out at the NovaCare complex today made me feel a little giddy. I don't know why. Inside the Birds podcast brings you Football at 4 here on a Sports Fast Tuesday, which means Andrew DiCecco is in the house. We will talk some birds and some football with him. So much going on. You know, one thing is for sure. The Eagles run the roost in this town, even when the Sixers are in the playoffs. The traffic on the website and everything towards the Eagles is just amazing. We always appreciate it. That's why we have Football at 4. That's why we talk football all the way through the NFL season and the offseason and the summer. And we do it now here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline with Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com as he joins us now on the Sports Bash. What's going on, Andrew?
Hey, Mike, doing well. How are you?
Are you as giddy as I am to see the players back out there? I know it's your job to kind of cover it and everything, but the fact that they're back, we didn't know what the heck we were getting last year. They're out there. Everything seems a little normal.
Yeah, well, like I was telling Josh, it's, football for all intents and purposes is back. And this time last year, we were sitting there wondering what was going to happen. Is there even going to be a season? And now you start to see everything come together and the players are out on the field and training camp's set to go off as normal. So it's encouraging to say the least.
Very much so. One thing that we saw a lot of today was video of one Jalen Hurts mixing it up. And, everybody wants to kind of see what he's going to look like. And obviously the new receiver, new toy out there, Devonta Smith. But I thought, interestingly enough, after practice today, when Jalen Reagor spoke, he had some of the interesting highlights of the day. And he kind of talked about, hey, I'm going to be playing in the slot. And then he wanted to kind of walk that back a little bit to say, well, I'm going to play outside and inside. I'm going to be moving around a lot. But, we talked a lot about this wide receiver group yesterday, but not so much their roles. And, Andrew, from you, because there's a lot of younger guys, how do you kind of see this group meshing together in terms of roles?
Well, to me, they have an ideal complement of wide receivers. And in terms of Jalen Reagor, who you just mentioned, he's more of a player who they can move around and get him the football. You and I talked about this, I believe, last week, that he was really underutilized and misused last season under Doug Peterson. And this year you have a coaching staff that has 3 wide receiver minds that are going to ship these guys. And I think that when they drafted Jalen Reagor, the plan was always to be he's a guy that he can be a vertical threat. You can get him the ball out of the backfield. You can get him the ball on dump-offs and let him take advantage of his ability to make plays after the catch. And I think that's what you're going to see here in Nick Sirianni. Now, when you look at Devonta Smith, playing opposite Jalen Reagor, he's someone that is going to be a volume type receiver, in my opinion. Yes, he's only 170 pounds. I understand that. But he can go over the middle, catch the football. He has that rapport with Jalen Hurts from college. And he has a tremendous catch radius and sure hands. So to me, he's going to be a guy that I can see easily getting about 70 catches this season in this offense.
Yeah, and then
go
ahead.
Then when you look at a guy like Greg Ward, in my opinion, he has a little bit of an uphill battle to make the roster. Yes, he's been on here for the last 2 years, but he can only play the slot. He doesn't have that burst, those intangibles, those traits that make you feel like you have to keep him on the back end of the roster and stash him and stop another team from claiming him. He's a sure-handed receiver. He runs terrific routes. He has great spatial awareness, but when it comes to after the catch ability, it's not there. He's a one-dimensional type of player. Then you have guys like Quez Watkins and John Hightower who also have a little bit more speed, a little dynamic ability, and I think that when you look at Greg Ward, he could find himself on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I'm interested to kind of, get your take because it looked like the Eagles rotated their guys in some of the drills with Reagor as a Z, Watkins, Hightower playing the Z spot, and then on the X side you had Smith, Fulgham, Ward, JJ, and Grimes, who's a guy that a lot of people are interested in. And obviously that doesn't give us any insight of where they're going to go. But as you kind of said, you got Smith and Reagor kind of pairing up together. You had Fulgham and Watkins kind of teaming up together. If they're going to play Reagor, though, in the slot, which is what he said, you wonder what that means for a guy like Greg Ward or what that means for a guy like J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, because I'm interested to see what they do with Whiteside. Do they play him on the outside as an X? Do they try to say, all right, we got a big-bodied guy, let's move him into the slot? He's the one guy that I feel is maybe the most interesting story of this camp.
Yeah, and when you look at J.J. Arcega-Whiteside and his body type and where he can play, I see him more as an X receiver along the lines of a Travis Fulgham. He's going to be going head-to-head with Travis Fulgham. Travis Fulgham, in my opinion, has the inside track. He's played at a high level. We've seen that for, a 4-week stretch, granted, but we have not seen that from J.J. So he has an uphill battle to make the roster as well, just like Greg Ward. I think he's very limited, Mike. I don't know that he can play anywhere else other than the outside. I don't think he has the dynamic, the explosiveness out of the slot. He doesn't really separate particularly well. He's not good in confined spaces. He's more of that jump ball receiver, that guy who's going to go up and challenge the catch point, come up with those contested catches. That's what they drafted him to be. He hasn't done that yet, and he's going to have to prove that if he wants to stick around.
Let me ask you this.
Contribute on special teams.
Let me ask you this, because when they had Aguilar, they had him on the outside. His best season came on the inside. He was much better as a slot guy here than he was on the outside. Now he went to the Raiders, and he was better out there than he was here. But do you think that they could just say, hey, last year it seemed like they wanted JJ to learn a lot of different – and look, maybe the guy just can't play, but if he focused on being that slot guy, is that an area where he could excel?
Well, I don't see why not, right? You have to try it first. You have to exhaust every option. I mean, you spent a second-round pick on this guy. You want to make sure that you've tried everything and left no stone unturned before you turn the page and move on from him, right? I mean, I think that you have to give him an opportunity to play the slot. He hasn't proven that he can play on the outside, so give him every opportunity to earn a slot job so he can at least have inside and outside versatility. He also doesn't play special teams, so that's another downside when you're looking at him from an evaluation standpoint. But, yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think they need to give him a look in the slot and at least try him.
Right, that to me – and I, from what I understand, just looking at a lot of the beat writers today, was that Nick Sirianni was very hands-on with the receiving core. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I feel like you said, I was not happy with the way that Doug Peterson utilized Jalen Reagor last year. And maybe he didn't do a good job utilizing J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. I'm glad to see that Nick Sirianni is really getting his hands dirty with this group of wide receivers, and maybe he can get more from these guys.
Right, and I think that a lot of these guys were sort of pigeonholed and shoehorned into these roles, whereas I think that they had a lot more to offer. They just weren't necessarily – they didn't really play to their strengths, Mike. And when you hear Nick Sirianni talk, those are some of the things that he preaches right off the bat. Competitiveness, catering to his players' strengths, and I think that's really what you're going to see early on. I think that's going to really relate to – it's going to be very relatable and to a lot of the players on the roster, and I think that's how you win a locker room over, by not sort of customizing your offense to the way that you want it and kind of making these guys fit where they don't necessarily fit. I think it's more so try and see what their strengths are and work around that.
Absolutely, and I think Nick Sirianni is more equipped to do that than Doug Peterson was, especially at that particular position. Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. We saw a lot of the wide receivers in because, of course, Devonta Smith and what he brings to the table there. And what do you think about Quez Watkins and the opportunity for him in this spot? Because he was a guy, between him and Hightower, I would imagine those two guys are kind of battling, but two different type of players who kind of do similar, different body types, I should say, who do similar. They're both guys with a lot of speed, can go down the field. But what kind of opportunity is here for Watkins?
Well, when you're comparing him to John Hightower, I actually think that Quez Watkins has more upside, and I do think he's going to be one of those fringe players that actually does have moments where he flashes throughout the season because he does have that speed. He is good in a confined space. He can return punts. Whereas John Hightower, let's not forget, John Hightower is a little older. I believe he's 25 years old. He spent 2 years in JUCO, had 2 years of production at Boise State, but he's still a raw player by all accounts. He didn't show a lot of awareness in his route running. He had confidence issues that sort of plagued him, and then Quez Watkins sort of overtook him in the pecking order. So I think that him, Greg Ward, and Quez Watkins are all sort of going to be fighting for one or two spots there. But I like Quez Watkins as a slot player. I think he's another movable part that Nick Sirianni can get creative with and get him the ball in space. But I think that he showed some things at the end of the season last year that kind of prompted me to think that he's going to have a more an elevated role this season.
Yeah, I'm interested in Watkins. He was a guy that I liked. And another guy, Andrew, would you agree that I'm not sure that Doug Peterson really knew what to do with?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree. All
right, let's look at a couple other interesting stories that are happening here at the OTAs that are going on. And Shane Steichen said this over the weekend. He said, man, my eyes just went – I'm looking at the skill position players, but my eyes go to the offensive line. Lane Johnson has been cleared to kind of do off-season activities. Today, you're seeing Brandon Brooks on the field. I feel like this might be one of the keys to this season is the health of this offensive line. And you wonder what kind of offense they could have if this offensive line is intact.
Well, that's the key to any season, having a healthy offensive line, right? I mean, the Eagles haven't had that in a number of years, it feels like, and they have a lot of older players that they're counting on, such as Brandon Brooks and Lane Johnson. Having them back is obviously an immense upgrade to the offensive line. I'm sure if they had their druthers, they wouldn't have Landon Dickerson wouldn't see a snap this year. If he did, then it would be because of, God forbid, a injury to Brandon Brooks or a regression from Isaac Seumalo. But their starting unit is really tight, and they now have a number of backups like Nate Herbig and Jack Driscoll and Jordan Mailata, who I think can actually edge out Andre Dillard. They have a lot of guys that have played now. They played meaningful snaps last year. So now there's a lot of depth. You have LaRaven Clark, who, of course, they just signed. So, I mean, I think that the offensive line, it went from a weakness to a strength in a matter of, weeks.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think it's a big difference, man, if you can get that offensive line to stay healthy, not just get out there to start the season. They got to stay healthy. But, here's the big difference, Andrew, is that last year – it's one thing if one guy goes down. All right, we can try to mix and match and scheme for one guy going down. But when you lose multiple guys at multiple positions, no team is overcoming that. And that's why I feel like it's so hard to get a read on what that team was last year.
Right. Show me any team that loses multiple starters and it has guys waiting in the wings that can step in and play at an all-pro level. It's just not going to happen. But I will say, Mike, that you saw a lot of encouraging signs from Nate Herbig and Jack Driscoll. Maybe they're not starting caliber players, but they are guys that can step in and start a game or two.
Yeah, but guess what, Andrew? If only one of those guys has to play, you're okay. It's when multiple of those guys of that caliber have to play at the same time. And mind you, one week Driscoll's playing guard, the next week he's playing tackle. The guy next to him is different than it was the week before. That's hard for any caliber player to overcome.
Let alone a day 3 pick who is sort of getting, shuffled around the lineup. I mean, that's a tough ask for anyone, but he was kind of thrown into the fire and he was forged by fire, so to speak.
Andrew DiCecco wrote a piece, took an all-22 look at Ryan Kerrigan, and you say gas still left in the tank. What did you see in the all-22 look from Ryan Kerrigan and how he might be able to help this team more than others out there might believe?
Well, I saw an instinctive pass rusher on tape. I also saw someone who is adept at playing in space, right? You don't necessarily think of a defensive end being able to move like he could, be very fluid laterally, but I saw him chase down guys on screen passes such as A.J. Green and Samaje Perine, and his hands are very violent and active, and he never stops moving, and he has a lot of juice left in the tank. I mean, he had, I believe it was 5.5 sacks last season, playing just under 40% of the snaps, which was a career low for him. I think in Philadelphia, he's going to. You heard what Jonathan Gannon said about keeping guys fresh and getting everybody snaps. If you're active, you're going to play. Well, I think a big reason for him coming here was because of playing time, and I think he's going to fit in nicely. Wouldn't surprise me if he challenges Derek Barnett at the start for a starting spot.
I literally was just going to say, is he a guy that can play opposite of Brandon Graham? Can you play those two guys on the field at the same time?
Yeah, I think so, and I think that's a lethal pass rush attack right there.
Well, not to mention you have Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave in the middle. You put those four guys out there, and I mean it's a situation where that's a lot of pass rush. it doesn't help the fact that they don't have a corner to play on the other side yet, but that's going to be a pretty much like the offensive line. If that group, those four guys can stay healthy, you teams are going to have their hands full.
Yeah, and let's not forget Josh Sweat, right? I mean, Josh Sweat's a guy who I think could have a breakout season. Is he going to ever be a starter who can log 50 snaps a game? Probably not. He has durability concerns, but when you saw him come in fresh, you saw the burst off the edge. And I think that he's a guy that you can count on as that third defensive end. Let's not forget Nolan Williams, the rookie third-round pick, of course, who will be playing some defensive end and defensive tackle. That's really good depth on paper. Like you said, health is going to be paramount to their success.
All right, let me get your opinion and thoughts on a Julio Jones. First off, should the Eagles have any interest there?
Well, of course. I mean, Julio Jones is one of the best receivers in football, and if the Eagles really feel like they're in position to contend in the NFC East and make a run, why not? I mean, he's going to make your offense better. He's going to elevate your offense. He's going to help your quarterback. And, I mean, I think everybody would love a Julio Jones on the roster.
Yep, I think a lot of people would like him. It's just what would it take to kind of get him. If they made a trade for Julio Jones, I guess the message is we think we can win.
Yeah, I mean, if they make a serious play for Julio Jones, they're all in on this season. You know, there's no rebuild. That whole rebuild conversation goes right out the window.
Yeah, that's why I'm kind of torn because I'm like 32 years old. I mean, what am I giving up to get him? But the message to me is, hey, we've got two young receivers here. They got to learn from somebody. That's a great message there. Julio Jones, hey, we're gonna work. You're gonna work with Devonta Smith and Jalen Reagor, and then all of a sudden, that's your wide receiving core. It's like, man, your outlook on this season changed drastically, at least in my mind.
Yeah, and the wide receiver room is so young, Mike, that they really do need a veteran. I believe the oldest receiver there, the most experienced, is Greg Ward. They need another veteran there to really take these young guys under the wing, show them how to be a pro and elevate the offensive command of room.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. It goes by fast as the Eagles are back on the field for the rest of the week here. And, of course, we'll have it covered during Football at 4 with the guys from the Inside the Birds podcast. Check out the new Inside the Birds. It dropped yesterday at 6 a.m. The new one will drop on Thursday at 6 a.m. Tomorrow, Jeff Mosher's here. Adam Kaplan back on Thursday as we'll get some news and notes. And then don't forget that June 1 date is coming up, and there's going to be some more movement going around in the NFL. We'll have it all for you here during Football at 4. Andrew DiCecco at A DiCecco NFL, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Andrew, appreciate it, man.
You got it, man. Talk soon.